Hey kids, welcome back to another pizza party. I'm Mrs. Pizza, and this is a reading vlog. So I've been seeing a bunch of videos of people that are letting their pets pick their TBRs out for them, and if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I am mildly obsessed with my dogs. So I thought this would be super fun to let each one of my dogs pick out a different book for me to read. You know, why not? Maybe we'll find something fun. So first up, we have Miss Cheese. And she's gonna pick a book out for us. How you feeling, Miss Cheese? You feeling the pressure of this, or do you feel like you can rise to the occasion? She seems psyched. Let's get Cheese to pick out a book for us. All right. The book that Miss Cheese picked is The Blood Trials by N.E. Davenport. All I know about this one is that it is recommended for fans of Red Rising. This is the story of our main character whose grandfather was important in the government somehow, and she's recently found out that he might have been assassinated, and so she joins some sort of trials to infiltrate from the inside and investigate her grandfather's murder. Also blood. I don't know much, but I'm excited. Cheese did good. You did good, Cheese. She's really enthusiastic about this right now. But I'll check back in once I've read a little bit of this. I just need a moment. Just a moment. Just a mere moment, friends. All right, let's do an update because I am 100 pages into the Blood Trials, which was chosen by our resident cute puppy girl, Miss Cheese. So I can tell you a little bit more about this one. This is the story of Ikenna, also known as Kenna. She grew up in this society where her grandfather was a very important individual. He was a war hero and had worked his way up into the highest ranking position that he possibly could have attained. But this is not an idealized society. They're training soldiers, and it sounds like they are very war ready all the time. There's a lot of rhetoric being spoken to them. And not only that, but this is a very racist society. Ikenna, or Kenna, and her grandfather both have darker skin, and that is looked down upon in this society. So, in our opening scene, Kenna is grieving the loss of her grandfather. He has recently passed away, and she is at a bar getting drunk with her friends because she is not coping with her grief very well. She immediately gets into a fight with someone she should not get into a fight with, and then promptly has to flee, although she kicks butt. It's alluded to that she probably shouldn't be able to kick this butt, but she has something going on. We're not privy to what yet, but she has something going on that makes her able to kick the butts. Kenna is then visited by her grandfather's best friend, who is like a super duper spy within this government. And he tells her that he thinks that her grandfather did not die of natural causes, but was assassinated. So Kenna takes it upon herself to infiltrate this society from the inside, a la Red Rising, and sets herself up to train to be one of these super elite soldiers. And she is trying to figure out who could have possibly had something to do with the death of her grandfather. Now, this is 110% an adult novel. Dark, violent things are happening, but all of our characters are like young adult age. So especially Kenna, she is making decisions and jumping to conclusions that someone her age would. She's like I don't even know how old she is. I'm assuming she's like 17 or 18 because she's just graduated from what I'm assuming was like their version of high school, although it sounded like soldier training since she was like a baby. They're young. She's young. She's making choices that a young, grieving, reckless person would be making. And I'm hoping we have some growth because it's kind of hard to watch someone just run away train for vengeance. But we have started our training, aka our trials, to become one of these elite soldiers, and it is brutal. She has some very good friends that have come to the trials with her, and we've met some of the other characters. We have our suspects. If this is leaning more YA, I already know that one of the suspects is not going to turn out to be who we think he is, but instead will probably end up being a love interest for either Kenna or one of her friends. Who knows? So far, I'm really liking it. If you like Red Rising, and you liked the competition infiltrating from the inside aspect of that, then this would probably be right up your alley. Although it is reading a little YA, but violent. YA characters in an adult book setting. That's how it's reading right now, which I'm actually really, really enjoying it. So I gotta chip away some more at this because this is a thick boy and I gotta make some headway. But I will check back in with you once I've gotten past the 50% mark. Fingers crossed, because Cheese is like full-blown energy these past couple days. So if she's gonna be doing the chewing, I might get some reading done. I'm into it. How beautiful, weighty. All right, so I said I would update you when I hit around the 50% mark of, oh, I'm sorry, I did not mean to hit your tongue like that, I'm sorry. When I hit the 50% mark of the blood trials, but I lied. I finished it first. There wasn't really any need for me to update you at the 50% mark because we were just in the thick of the blood trials at the 50% mark, which is fine. I will say I finished it, and I will officially say if you are a fan of Legendboard and Red Rising and you wish those two books could have a baby, let me introduce you to the baby. This is the baby. This story follows our main character, Ikenna, withstands a bunch of really torturous trials in order to become an elite soldier in the government in the republic that she lives in. Ikenna has chosen to undergo these trials and become this elite soldier because her grandfather has been murdered, and she wants to get to the bottom of it. My final thoughts on this book are we are following a very YA character. I believe she's about 19 years old, but she acts very YA through a very adult sci-fi fantasy novel. Messed up stuff is happening this entire time. And Ikenna, although I like her as a character and I'm rooting for her to get her vengeance, and she has a lot of fun inner monologues and actual outer monologues where she talks about stabbing people in the neck a lot. She's got a lot of aggression. She makes a lot of snap decisions and immature kind of jumps to judgment, but she's 19. It makes sense for her to make a lot of these choices, to be going through the grieving process that she's going through. I don't think that any of it was unrealistic. I enjoyed the book, but it's not a new favorite. I liked where it was going. I felt like we got to the end of our trial competition and that's where the book should have ended, but instead we moved into the territory which what I would have considered the beginning of like a second book. And I went and did a little research and found out that the author originally wanted to do 3 books and the publisher told him, 2. So they shortened their 3-book story into 2 books. And it feels like we reach the end of book 1 and jump a little bit into book 2 in this book, which makes sense, seeing as how the author was told to make it a duology. I enjoyed this. I would continue with the second book, but not a new favorite. And seeing as how I really enjoyed Red Rising, but Legendborn wasn't necessarily my favorite, that makes a lot of sense. I had a good time. If you like Legendborn and Red Rising, hello, read a book. So Cheese's pick for my Cheese's book pick turned out to be a pretty good. Cheese did okay. I'm proud of Cheese for picking this book, and I'm glad I read it. And now it's time for Miss Winnie to pick her choice. Winnie, you gonna do a good job? Are you gonna do a good job picking books? I bet you are. Shall we pick some books and see which one Winnie picks today? Yeah, let's pick a book, Winnie. All right, the book that Winnie picked is Immortality, a love story, and this is by Dana Schwarts. This is the second book in the, what is the name of this duology? I'm going to call it the Anatomy duology, but I don't know if that's what it is. But this is the second book following our main character, Hazel. But since this is the second book, I'm going to tell you what the first book is about instead of what this book is about before we get into it. Anatomy, a love story. This is the story of Hazel. She is a young woman living in Edinburgh in the, was it the 1600s? Girl, when were you alive? She is a young woman living in the 1800s in Edinburgh, and she comes from a well-to-do family. She lives in a big manor house, and she is, you know, doing what every upper-class lady in that time period would be doing, except for Hazel has a dream. She wants to become a surgeon. Now, at this point in time, physicians were looked at as something that was, you know, esteemed and well accepted in society. Surgeons, on the other hand, were looked at as butchers because surgeons did a lot of their learning through the dismemberment of dead bodies. Now, at this point in time, the only dead bodies that medical surgical students were able to work on were those who were condemned to be hanged, so criminals. But that didn't really supply enough cadavers for the students to be learning upon. So a lot of them took to buying dead bodies that were acquired by grave robbers, otherwise known as resurrection men, who would go into graveyards after dark, basically dig up fresh dead bodies and sell them to medical students. That is a true thing that happened. And there was a lot of crazy, wild true crime cases around these things. Well, in this novel, Hazel is wanting to become a surgeon and through circumstances has worked out a sort of deal that if she can pass the surgical exams at the end of the year, she will be allowed to further go into the world of becoming a surgeon. But in order to do so, she needs dead bodies. And so she becomes friends with Jack, who is a local resurrection man, and they start stealing dead bodies for Hazel. This is a very gothic, it is a YA love story. I believe Hazel is 16 at the beginning of this story. It is a love story. Hazel is feeling a lot of the pressures of society, the things that are expected of her. Her mother is absent, her father is absent. Like, they're both absent. Her mother is mentally absent, her father is physically absent. But she has aspirations of being important and helping people and being more in life than just, you know, someone that drinks tea in someone's fancy living room and goes to dances. While all of this is happening and Hazel is working to become the best surgical student that she could possibly become, there is a dark mystery happening in the background that even our main characters aren't really aware is happening, but you as the reader are seeing things that they aren't seeing, kind of privy to details that they might be missing. Gothic YA romance story. I really liked this. I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed it and how fast I was able to read it. But I will say, if you really like this, don't read the epilogue. Don't read it. It gives you a nugget of something that you don't need. Let it end where the book ends. Do not read the epilogue and then pick up book 2, because I feel like the epilogue almost spoils a little bit the thing that would be a mystery going into book 2 if you hadn't read it. So I'm gonna pick up Immortality, a love story. I'm kind of excited about this. All right, let's talk about Immortality, a love story. I have gotten 154 pages into this, and that's almost the halfway point. I'm flying through this without giving away any spoilers, because again, this is the second book in a duology. We are once again following our main character, Hazel, who a couple of months, I think this is like 6 months after the ending of the first book, it picks right back up again. She's continued on with the things that she had started doing in the first book, at least the things she could continue on with. She's still kind of reeling from the ending of the first book a little bit, but as usually happens, as per normal in a second book, the world is expanding a little bit. We, instead of just being in this tight little bubble surrounding Hazel in the first book, the world is opening up, we're getting a little bit more, we're going to different places, we're experiencing different things. Hazel she comes from a place of extreme privilege, and from that a little bit of
she's naive, but she's also like 16 in the first book. So there's a lot of, if I do the thing I'm supposed to do and I work really, really hard, eventually the thing I want will happen. And as anyone who lives in the real world knows, that's not exactly how things always work out. Sometimes it's not the person that works the hardest or wants it the baddest that succeeds. Hazel is now wrapped up in a completely different world than she was in the first book. She has grown a lot. She's now 17 instead of 16. But she also has been through the experiences of the first book. But there's still moments of like, Hazel, girl, I'm proud of you for growing and maturing and paying attention to things a little bit more than you did last year. But I'm worried about you, girl. I think we should be worried about Hazel. Hazel has, through circumstances, gotten herself into a situation that is entirely not her fault. She's just kind of going with it because she's doing the best she can. I think these books both bring up big questions about who is worth sacrificing for science, for the greater good, in quotation marks. Who are the scientists and the privileged and the elite willing to sacrifice to get what they want? That is a big theme in the first book, and it is also a big theme in the second book. But I'm really enjoying it. And I've completely timed this correctly today because Winnie just dug like a full-on tunnel. Like she dug a giant hole in the backyard, and Cheese was her accomplice. And so now they are both currently passed out because digging a tunnel in my backyard apparently was a lot of work. So I have to go fill that tunnel full of dirt. That's what I'm gonna do, and then I'm gonna be exhausted. Really, it's just created a lot of activities for all of us today. That's all Winnie wanted to really do, you know, she's just a giver. She's giving us all an activity. But I will check back in when I have completed Immortality, a Love Story. Winnie's pick has been going really well. I think this has been, of the two books I've read, Winnie did a little better in the picking so far.
All right, guess who finished a book? This chick right here. Sorry if the camera moves, but Winnie has decided the exact perfect place to sit right now. It's on the other side of the camera. So if it wiggles, I'm sorry. But she's trying to get comfortable, you know? She needs to be comfortable these days. Also, the lighting is terrible because it is early as hell in the morning and I'm about to head to work. But since I finished Immortality, a Love Story, I thought I'd talk to you about it. Without giving anything away, because again, for the millionth time, this is the second book in a duology. I was happy where it went. I'm glad I got to spend some more time with Hazel in this world. I'm glad the world opened up a little bit. But I didn't love this as much as the first book. I think it was more our villain, or who our villains turn out to be, was fine. A lot of the themes in this book is basically about like the elite and how they use and take advantage of those who are of lesser means than them. In the first book, it has to do a lot with the aristocrats, the upper class. This one, we go full in, and we're dealing with the royalty of the time, but they're not the ones that are necessarily taking advantage, although I'm sure they're taking advantage. It's more about those who see themselves as the intellectually elite, which is something that is also kind of touched on in the first book, being the best and the brightest and the smartest and the most celebrated, and how sometimes that also can corrupt and make you feel like you're better than everyone else and you're going to make the best choices for everyone else. And, you know, it was a good book. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it as first. I didn't love it as much as the first one, but I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I have completed this duology. Everything gets wrapped up with a nice little bow at the end, which was fine. I'm glad we got to see where everybody ended up. Overall, Winnie picked good, you know? Winnie did a good job at picking. And maybe, since I enjoyed both books that the dogs picked for me, maybe I'll do this again. I just want them to be involved in basically every aspect of my life, really, my dogs, because I'm obsessed and I'm not ashamed of it. That, kids, is the end of this pizza party. I hope you're reading good books out there, wherever you are, and I'll see you next time.